So then do you think that animals that don't have this feature, is that evidence that they were not designed by a common designer of animals that have the radius ulna?
Well, the designer may have had a different reason for doing it, just like the guys who designed the Volkswagen put 4 wheels on it, but I got a guy up the street here that cuts them in half and puts a motorcycle wheel on the front.
What is your reason for thinking that the same person designed, say, the fly and the rat?
Well, you can look at any life form, even a paramecium, a single-celled organism. You get into a fly or a rat, and you're into such complex creatures. It defies intelligence to say such a thing could happen by chance.
Now, hold on, that's not a good explanation. I'm asking for why do you think positively that these things were designed by a common designer, not why you think evolution is false.
Well, the complex, for instance, all life forms have the same 20 basic amino acids.
Right. But that to me indicates common ancestry, because a common designer wouldn't be forced to do that.
Well, unless the common designer said, wow, let's make it where they can eat each other. They don't have to, if we all had vastly different proteins, amino acids, we could only eat each other. But God made it so the brown cow can eat the green grass and give the white milk, and I eat it, drink it, and get the blonde hair.
Yeah, but why would you need that? Why wouldn't he create half of creation with sort of one set of amino acids and together with the other set?
Yeah, I understand. Well, sort of he did. Some are right-handed chirality, some are left-handed chirality. But if you look at, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there. Jonathan, I'm running on half a brain here. If you look at languages, we have 26 letters in the English alphabet.
Right.
With those 26 letters, you can make an infinite number of books.
Right.
There is simply no limit.
Right.
The Chinese also have, 500 or 1,000 characters in their...
1,000.
Yeah. And they can, I would say it's pretty obvious that even though the Chinese and English alphabets are vastly different, we still think the same way. We think in terms of nouns and adjectives and verbs.
This is like Chomsky's universal grammar idea.
Yeah, I've actually read an article where they've taken, deaf children and put them together and seen their actually deaf communities and seen how they can develop a language, much like ours, grammatically speaking, in just a few months or a few weeks.
Yeah, this is why Noam Chomsky says that our brains are actually hardwired in some sense to communicate with verbs, adjectives, pronouns, etc.
But why is that?
Are you asking me? I would say that it evolved that way, of course.
You don't think something that complex would require that there be some kind of intelligence behind it?
No, that's the entire point behind Darwin's theory. That's why it was so great, is it explains how complexity can rise. And whenever you say that your evidence for common design is that it's too complex to be evolved, you're basically just saying not Darwinism. You're just denying Darwin's theory, but you're not really giving an explanation of why you think Darwin's theory is false.
Well, I think all human observation and intuition would say if you shake up all the parts of a watch in a bag, it will never assemble itself into a running watch.
Yeah, probably not, but that's not Darwinism. You're ignoring half of the theory, and you know that.
Okay, do you think if you took all the parts to a watch, put them in a bag, and shook it up, and you had some kind of mysterious force that as soon as the right two got together, they would stay,
right,
and be selected for, and anything else would not stay? Would that speed up the process of turning the bag?
It would speed it up almost beyond comprehension, how fast it would speed it up. And Dawkins shows this in his
the blind watchmaker,
like a weasel program. Yeah, he has a program that simulates what you're talking about, and it does speed it up unimaginably.
Sure. The problem with that logic is, where does this energy come from? Where do these parts come from? How do these parts know they're supposed to go together? The parts themselves had to be designed to fit together, not only the whole mechanism.
This is where you're
wrong.
Well,
also, there's a problem with the weasel application. Ask Dawkins. You said you're a programmer, right?
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
No, ask him for the source code. If you're a programmer, look at the source code and see if that matches theoretical biology and evolutionary theory. Because Darwin is actually not Darwin, Dawkins is starting with something he wants to, and he's already started with a conclusion. I want this string.
Yep.
And
Jonathan,
he's already, so actually look at that and see if this is the way it would actually happen.
No, hold on, Jonathan. I knew you were going to say that, and actually Dawkins himself says that. He totally acknowledges that it's a cheat. Its only purpose of the program is to demonstrate that selection speeds up the process. He's not trying to actually emulate how evolution works in the real world.
Well, I'm glad you're admitting that. Okay.
Well, and Dawkins admits that in his own writings and talks on it.
But
there's no mystery here.
It's a misconception when people say that, for instance, these programs, these algorithms show that evolution is true, when these algorithms and these programs are not written to reflect respectively what happens in nature.
That kind of algorithm does not.
That's all I wanted to get in here and interject in.
That's fine. Yeah, I acknowledge that. The only reason I brought it up is to demonstrate that yes, if you add selection, it does speed up the process. The reason that the watch analogy is false to the real world is because the real world, the natural world, doesn't have a goal in mind. The modern forms that we have were not in the mind of some selective force from the very beginning. It just happened that way.
Well, let's take the watch analogy. We're shaking all these parts in a bag. The parts are well designed to fit each other. Well, I'll give you that, okay? That, I think, by the way, is very gracious to give you that much. The parts
I
themselves.
wouldn't expect that.
Okay. Now, who is providing the energy to shake this bag? Who's keeping these parts from flying all over the room? And why aren't they wearing each other out over these billions of years where they no longer fit?
It's just an analogy.
Right. But the shaking of watch parts together, even if they did fit and stick with your natural selection, you still would never make a watch because the last 5 parts are going to be worn down to a nub by the time you get them to go to the right spot. Now they no longer fit.
Yeah, in your analogy, but in the real world, whenever sexual reproduction produces a new genome for an offspring, it's happening on a molecular level where there's no friction. It's nanoscopic.
Right.
So it doesn't have these problems.
Now, if you were on my side, looking at your arguments here, would you see that it is pretty silly to believe all this complexity in life happened by chance over any number of bazillion years?
Well, it's kind of circular reasoning. You're asking, if I were on your side, would I be on your side? Well, come on, of course.
Do you understand why 60% of the American population thinks this whole idea is ludicrous?
Yeah, and
it's because they need more education, right?
And I'll simultaneously respond to your charge that you made earlier, and I think that you were referring to me, although I'm not sure, that people like me are just simply claiming that the public is dumb. And I have said over and over again, I do not think that. There's a big difference between ignorance and stupidity.
Okay, so you think the public is ignorant?
Absolutely.
And if the public understood as much as you understand, then they would agree with you.
I think that...
All right. Tomorrow, Karen. Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, folks, on the program.